Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now, guys? We've just went and won another derby match. That's us now undefeated against them in the league this season, and it feels like we've got both hands ready to take the league title back to paradise for a third season in a row. Brendan had the famous words at the beginning of the season for any of the doubters and the detractors for his reappointment at the club. I'll see you back here in May. Yes, it's job done. Basically, we've got Kilmarnock still to come this midweek. We'll preview that later in the video today before the final game of the season against St Mirren at Paradise next weekend, which we will be giving tickets away for here on the channel. Make sure to tune into the live stream we're going to do on Thursday to preview the match. It is for subscribers only. You need to be a subscriber to get involved. And I must say, I met lots of you guys that do enjoy the content, do subscribe to the channel at Paradise this weekend as well as last weekend. And, you know, this weekend after the game, I ended up into a few local establishments to have myself a wee beverage or two in the hot sun. And I got to meet some fantastic people that, you know, thankfully from doing this stuff, people see your face and like, oh, it's you. And people come up and talk to you. It's absolutely fantastic. I had an absolute great time. And if you do see me kicking about Celtic Park or anywhere else, don't be shy, guys. We'd love to hear about the support for the channel as well as any feedback. Because this channel, like every other Celtic fan media, I suppose, but it's by the fans, for the fans, you know. And what we always try and give on the channel here is a little bit of extra insight, a little bit of extra intel on the comings and goings, what's going around and all the rest of it. And I think everyone coming out of the Derby game kind of has some of the similar takeaways. But the first thing I really want to touch on is the atmosphere, because last week I thought was one of the best, you know, domestic games I've ever been to as a fan, especially excluding Derby matches. It was a raucous atmosphere. You know, the terraces were really filling into the pitch, and we could see the performance from the players really go up a gear or two. And, you know, this weekend was absolutely no different. We were all helped, of course, by the lovely weather that we had in Glasgow. Very, very rare that we get that, especially this year. It's been absolutely dreadful. And then we had some genuine big match pre-game kind of hype happening in the stadium, not just with the tifo that I'm sure grabbed a lot of attention, but with the live music we had as well, because it really did just feel like it gave it that kind of concert atmosphere right early in the game. And don't get me wrong, Celtic have done that kind of thing before, having some singers before games and all the rest of it, but it really did feel like a great warm-up act for the crowd. And then the tifo, we had proper Champions League group stage level effort from the guys over at the Green Brigade corner, and, you know, well done to everyone that organised that. It was an absolute topper. It really set the tone for the beginning of the match. And on the pitch, it was actually very similar to the way the Hearts game started last week, where although we had possession and we were passing the ball around nicely, there was a few times the ball turned over and we were isolated in 1v1 situations, and you just thought, Jesus, on a different day, some of these shots and chances could have been in the back of the net and really changed the kind of flow of the match. But after that, Celtic really did get into their stride. And I must say, I've been a bit of a critic on some of the tactics and the strategy that we've been playing at Celtic this season under Brendan Rodgers with this Ange Postecoglou squad, essentially, because none of the players here were here last year. And it's this whole thing where, and again, we've seen it work we've actually seen it work out very well in the first half, where we try and have a right-hand side attack and a left-hand side attack. We've got Forrest, O'Reilly and Johnston on one side here. Then we've got Daizen, Rio and Taylor on the other side. And then it's about Kyogo and McGregor connecting in the middle, and in the defence of Scales and Carter Vickers just kind of holding the fort, as it were, and dealing with whatever side of the pitch the ball's on, where the striker moves, just make sure they're passing them over and they're covering runs, and someone can be touch tight man for man if any balls and any runs get put into space or anything like that. So normally when we do this, like, midfield is the area of football that I kind of can pay the most attention to, or I am interested in the most, if that's the best way of saying that. And the best midfields in the world that, as Celtic fans, depending on your age, you've actually been able to see up close and personal, live in front of you, in some of the biggest matches that, you know, they've been involved in, Champions League group stages. And again, we see a lot of AC Milan, Barcelona, Juventus. You know, there's lots of great clubs that have been to Parkhead, but I think for any Celtic fan that went to a number of the Barcelona matches that we had early millennium, if you've seen Xavi and Iniesta playing in midfield, like, the thing that really defines them is they went everywhere together. They were almost holding hands, you know. They would go all over the pitch, give and go with each other, as well as linking up the play. Now, the reason I bring them up as an example, right, is because if you remember Brendan's like ascent as a manager through the Premier League to Liverpool and coming to Celtic in the first place, he's always been profiled as like a Pep, a Barca, tiki-taka, lots of passes, attacking football style of manager. And when I see the midfield be, you know, split in half like this, we've seen it a few weeks ago where it feels like McGregor is a dividing line between half of the team, the left side and the right side. And what this forces Rangers to do, if they're going to be sticking man for man, is also rip their team apart. Now, most other teams that we play against don't have the same pressure on them to try and win the match, or have maybe the talent in their team to come into the game thinking, reasonably, we should be trying to try and win the match. Most of the teams we play against it's kind of damage limitation from the get-go, and can they get lucky? Can they get something against the run of play? And Rangers kind of fell for it, hook, line and sinker, to be honest with you. Everyone was kind of going man for the most part. And when we've got the extra man at the back here, because it's only really Dessers and maybe Lawrence. Lawrence was actually quite busy in the first half, to be honest with you. I've not really seen him play too much, but he seemed quite strong and, was getting around the pitch well enough. But when we've got that extra man at the back, which is where these passes happen that a lot of people can lose their patience with, we have the extra man here, and it's just about as soon as we've got someone else kind of suckering themselves in to try and get, like we've seen the Lundstrom for the red card that we'll chat about later. But as soon as you get someone trying to abandon ship, abandon post, and maybe put a bit more pressure on the ball, is where the opportunity comes for us to maybe try and play into and create an opening. And in the first half, we did this to fantastic effect. Kyogo would drop in and give a little give and go. McGregor was also zipping through into space and playing a little bit of a give and go with Hatate or O'Reilly, depending on what side of the pitch it was on. And it was because there was so much space in the middle of the pitch, because we managed to get them to pull themselves all over the pitch. And it was probably one of the very few games this season where the actual to the letter plan of this web that we build on the pitch with the left side and the right side, it was a masterstroke. It was absolutely brilliant, and it gave us all the momentum that we needed in the first half to create the chances to get the goals. Now, with Fabio Silva, he's obviously been a real divisive character, especially over the last month or so. Celtic were half linked to him before he went to Rangers because they had European football style and we didn't. He did score a goal for them in Europe, but then the last couple of months with the diving and the celebrations and all the rest of it, he's turned himself into a bit of a joke figure. But in this game here, he gave Alistair Johnston a real run for his money. So much so that Alistair Johnston couldn't overlap. Alistair Johnston was not getting into the final third, especially in the first half. Now, Alistair Johnston, I think, had Fabio Silva in his pocket. I don't think Silva was getting any change out of him. And because when you're in the stadium, you can see things a little bit different. Fabio Silva was out to make pals. He was out shaking hands with Celtic players, picking them up, helping them out, having a wee, that was a good tackle, mate. Those wee kind of shoulder bumps and stuff like that. And I thought, he was strong, he was quick. And I thought, this guy under Rodgers, he might have actually been pretty good if he had that kind of attitude the whole time, So that was a little thing where I was like, I didn't expect to see that. I expected him to still be a bit of a prick, still be a bit of a dive merchant and a bit of a pantomime villain, but he put a pretty honest shift in. And because of that, he wasn't cheating and all the rest of it in that regard. Alistair Johnston had to put a pretty honest shift in at right back. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because we get a lot of praise and a lot of plaudits for McGregor for the opening goal, where he makes the overlap and run. He comes out into this pocket here to then feed O'Reilly for the shot that turns into goal. And that's because Alistair Johnston couldn't do that. On this right-hand side, whether it be Kuhn or Forrest, we don't ever really get that much. Forrest can shake his man and get rid of him and get into the byline for a cross. But it's work. It takes effort. Whereas normally when you've got that overlap and run, you can just pass into space and then he should be somewhat free to take a touch or two and then deliver. But because we don't have that overlap, we don't have that weapon. McGregor does it on the occasion for the goal, of course, which was absolutely fantastic. But then we don't ever see that again for the rest of the match. And Forrest, again, for the first half, was untouchable. Barisic couldn't get anywhere near him. Everything he done was brilliant. Whether he was coming inside or going on the outside, I thought Forrest was really, really good. And everything in the first half really did go down this right-hand side. And what was great to see about that is we got Daizen coming in here a little bit more to be Kyogo's shadow. And it almost, it was much, much similar to us having two up front when it was on this right-hand side here. A lot of our play this season has been focused down the left, which we'll talk about the left in a wee second. But Daizen, as we know, can be a creator, can get on the end of stuff himself in the box or whatever, but he's a great poacher. He's a great little instinct to be at the right place at the right time, and then you're just crossing your fingers. He makes a sweet enough connection, picks the right spot, whatever it is. So it was good to see that we had that kind of dynamic developing, because normally when Daizen's been playing, he's been the best wide player, so we have to play left almost every time. And then, we're maybe hoping the right-sided player does this, which has been non-existent really this season. So That was a really nice development I quite enjoyed. Daizen's obviously still in Tavernier's nightmares after this game as well, which is pleasing to see. But really, I think that was really the tail of the first half here. We get the first goal with that McGregor overlap, which was fantastic. And then the second goal is one of those kind of freak occurrences, right? Because we catch Rangers a little bit higher up the pitch defensively than what they normally do. But Carter Vickers, who I'm a big fan of, but Carter Vickers, if you watch him, through that lens of what is his contributions, that's a pass, that's a tackle, where are they? And what's the subsequent results? He's not really a long passing player. He's not really a guy that breaks lines with his passing. He's a nice 5 to 10 yard passer. Keep it simple, keep it clean, take 1 or 2 touches and keep it moving between whoever he needs to move it between. Maybe once a game you might see him try the sort of ball that he shells on the diagonal to get over to Daizen here, and it comes over absolutely fantastically for him. Obviously, nice big ball for Daizen. Daizen hooks it into the box for obviously the big Lundstrom own goal, which was just the beginning of the end for him, as it were. So that was fantastic to see, because the defence, like Scales tries a long ball like that every so often. He's kind of okay at it, and it's normally for Kyogo he's aiming for, which trying to hit a gang like that centrally, you really need to nail it, and you really need to catch the defenders out, because Kyogo's not going to win a flick on or win it in the air as such. He's hoping to catch the shoulder, try and catch the ball dropping behind somebody to then nick it off them and make something happen. So it just feels like sometimes maybe Scales' long pass choice as fruitful, but Carter Vickers absolutely nailed a beautiful diag here into a great pocket of space. Daizen can run onto it, and then let me say, Bob's your uncle from that one. But for the Rangers goal, and for like almost every kind of chance that they did create in this game, they really wanted us to kind of bank ourselves in, which, when we retreat and come back into our defensive shape, we're quite good at keeping narrow and keeping the spaces, tight in between them. But Rangers kind of fancy that, because they think that somebody like Dessers, Fabio Silva on the back post, perhaps even the big lump Lundstrom, could maybe beat us in the air. Some of these guys are pretty formidable in the air. Scales is obviously a good combatant, and Carter Vickers is no slouch either. So, we have guys to defend this kind of thing. But quite often they would let us kind of bank in nice and deep, and then they would be looking, Tavernier would be normally a bit further forward. So I think it might have been something like Sterling or Diamande, but they were looking for some of these deeper crosses that were free. This man out here wouldn't be pressed. We would be kind of tucking ourselves back into shape and just shell one into the box. Now, the goal comes from the left-hand side, the right-hand side, I beg your pardon, where you've got 2 guys pinning themselves onto Greg Taylor at the back post. He's got absolutely no chance. They kind of bobble a ball, and then it falls to Dessers just in front of Scales and Carter Vickers to kind of slot it home. A bit of a reel against the run of play goal, because we scored those 2 goals really quick. The atmosphere is absolutely electric, and we didn't expect that goal to go in. I certainly didn't. And then from there you do worry a little bit that, hey, this game might get a little tense and all the rest of it. And then that leads us ultimately, big CCV there, to the Lundstrom red card. Now, I don't think you need to tell me that this is a red card. Kenny Miller's made himself an absolute clown out of himself with really grabbing on and not letting go of this position he's taken on it. Is just absolutely mental. It is 100% the reason VAR is there, because that is above the ankle. It's an ankle snapper. He's not got any connection to the ball. He's going in full pace, studs up. And I know Kenny Miller saying nobody was shouting for that to be a red. If you were sitting where I was sitting and I had a full view of it, everyone was saying red. Maybe I started to chant, but it was red all day long. And I don't care who you are and what you think. But again, for all the deficiencies and all the bad things about VAR, that's 2 games in a row where it really has came in to provide justice. Last week with the Shankland handball, and then with this Lundstrom thing. So it's good to see that that the reason I was happy it was brought in was for this kind of thing, even though we've had so many bad decisions going with it and all the rest of it. You just want to be saved from the downright cheating or the downright incompetent in terms of some of the decisions that go for or against you. But from when Lundstrom gets sent off, now I do agree with Brendan that we did lose a bit of momentum out of the game after the Matt O'Reilly penalty miss, right? But for me, the game kind of died off when the red card happened right before the stroke of half time, because Rangers come out the second half, they take off Suter for McCausland is his name, and they switch Dujon Sterling from right mid to centre back. McCausland goes up, obviously Tavernier's in here. And the reason for me that the game kind of dies off at this point here is because Rangers don't mind defending with a really deep narrow back 4, leaving 2 midfielders in front, and then they've got a wide option on one side depending on where the ball is and whatever for the counter attack, as well as their target man can still kind of hang up close enough to the defence or in midfield to be a bit busier to put a bit of pressure on the ball. Because, in one half, right, this is enough to defend. We've seen teams with 10 men. It's not a new thing in football, bank in nice and deep and, make it really hard for chance creation and then try and spring a counter-attack and maybe get a result against the run of play. And, when we're shaping up into this position still, Rangers are a man down. We've still got Rio all the way over here. We've still got O'Reilly all the way over here. And then, everything else as we've seen it to this point. We just have no idea in this game of how to take advantage of the extra man at all, because Rangers take away the deficiency of being a man down by not wanting to stretch themselves over the pitch, not wanting the ball. They're losing the game anyway. It does kind of suit them. With us putting the pressure on Celtic to put them to the sword, we could have scored 3. We know about the missed penalty, the offside goals. You don't need me to walk you through all of that. But the pressure's on us to go and score more goals. That kind of plays into their hands a little bit. And that's why still at 10 men, McCausland didn't really get too much going, but they did try and hit him, and he was a willing runner. Same with Fabio Silva for the most part. And they almost had an outlet. They almost had an opportunity to get out of their own half at times, which, made it quite hairy for us when you just see a one-on-one running back towards goal with only one goal in it, So I really do feel that, and again, we did see some periods of the game where Vickers maybe would get into this position here on the ball and then try and play passes here, but we're letting Rangers stay with us man for man. Or if not, maybe like if you look at the way some of the players are kind of dropped out, it's a bit more crowded, because we've got centre-backs in here, we've got a wide player holding the width. So our numerical advantage is just not taken advantage of whatsoever. Now, the main problem here, right, is twofold, right? We're still not using McGregor as that overlapping player that we did for the first goal. He's sitting in this controller position here, cutting the team in half left to right. We're either playing with the left-hand side guys or we're playing with the right-hand side guys. And he's in here dictating the tempo. He's not doing what he did in the first half in the sense of going beyond the back line, giving that overlap, giving that extra option at all. Now, I get being conservative in this situation and, all the rest of it, which is fine, but we do have an extra man and there is space to play in. What you really need to happen here, if you're going to keep McGregor in that frame of mind and that kind of instruction, is a centre-back to take up space and go forward and beyond. Now, Scales was getting into these nosebleed areas, and you just know that whether it's a lack of confidence because of maybe some of the supporter opinion about him, or maybe just, a development of his own skill set, because, this is something that is exclusive to dominant team centre-backs. This isn't, teams he's played for in Ireland and Aberdeen, something that they're going to be used to in such a big game. So he does look uncomfortable. He doesn't always make the right pass. And he's not always capable of doing the elite thing that we need him to do. And Carter Vickers isn't that guy either. He's not going to go in and break the lines. And from what I've seen so far this season, to be quite honest with you, they're taking a very brave manager to do it. But these qualities that we need is like a Mike Naroki, maybe a Wata, the way we've seen a Wata play centre-back. And with an extra man, we only are a goal up and we do have the result in our hands. So there's not really any need to really gamble, for lack of a better term, on the game state, on the run of play. And, changing your defence is always a fool's errand, So it is something you really need to brave to do, and you would really need to believe it would pay off. And I can understand why the manager wouldn't. But after O'Reilly misses that penalty, it's only 20 minutes left in the game. And, they are shelling more and more balls going forward. And they're making us run up and down the pitch a little bit more as well. And that's really where the nerves came from. Yilmaz and Raskin coming on when they did gave them a lot of legs and a lot of ability to try and transition up and down the pitch. McGregor has to grab Raskin and wrestle him to the ground to stop a counter-attack, to stop a transition, because this is the style of play they want to play. They want to be nice and deep and only look for one or two guys, isolate a 1v1 and try and get forward. And that kid Yilmaz, I know there's lots of jokes about how small he is and stuff like that, which I can totally get. But every time I've seen him for Rangers, he's a decent left back. He's not bad, He's maybe not amazing. He maybe doesn't always make the right choices. But again, very willing runner to go up and beyond and really try and get them up the pitch. And when it's one goal in it, there needs to be something for us to maximise on this extra man that we have. Now, as the game kind of goes on after the penalty, we get a little bit deeper and then we're trying to play some counter-attack balls. Daizen Maeda comes on for Kyogo, who does give us an extra bit of energy, an extra bit of zest at that point in the match. And again, I think he was suffering a little bit from the Kyogos. He was a little bit too selfish in this game. Did miss a big chance. Should have squared somebody else on. And I think that was a good move at a good time. But if you look at the Maeda chances, he's coming into space for a lot of them. He's running with other people. We're counter-attacking. 10-man goal down Rangers. And Kuhn, again, looks good 1v1. after that, he's just missing a little bit of an edge. But again, did give us some good energy. And we're seeing both these guys come on in the 70th minute. It's a little bit of an echo to the Hearts game again, where the substitution didn't happen at that 60-minute interval, but the 70-minute interval. And I think it's a nice detail. It's a nice kind of development we've had in the in-game management from Brendan and the team there. And, I was quite pleased with how that worked out. Alistair Johnston gets injured and has to come off for Anthony Ralston. And I think this is perfect. This is exactly why we have a guy like Ralston in the squad, because nobody's worried when Ralston comes on. Everyone knows that the Bricky is going to do his best, and it's no Fabio Silva at this point. He was against Wright. It's one of the few times we've made a defensive sub in that case where you do feel like, oh, this guy is going to be able to, not just hold his weight, but help us carry the water. And Ralston's got a great engine on him and a good cross. And you did feel that, they were maybe a wee bit more worried that Ralston was going to maybe burst into some of this space and whatever as well. Because he's a very front foot player. He knows what it is to be a Celtic player. And like I say, when he come on, there was no worries about it at all. And then we see Hatate come off for Iwata, which kind of cemented us a little bit more into this more defensive stance that we took for the latter part of the second half. Because Iwata and McGregor, when they come on together, they're obviously getting trained and coached into doing this, sitting in as a back, and as a double pivot, as the fancy people call it, or a bit of a shield in front of the back four. O'Reilly was still chapping at the bit to go and put his name on the result again. And you've still got Daizen running, causing problems. You've got Kuhn on the other side, who wasn't as found as much as the game wore on after he came off the bench. And Ida, obviously, as well. So, it just feels like, again, we're still inviting a little bit of pressure onto ourselves here. And then with Iwata coming on, like we've seen before, it feels like the team is chopped in half, but it's defence and attack rather than left and right. And as much as we did look dangerous, we should have got more goals in the second half. Again, I just don't feel that we ever looked like a team of 11 men against a team of 10 men. It just felt very much, Rangers were able to keep man for man for us in the key positions far too often. And we didn't rip them up too often. That style of play that worked so well in the first half against 11 men, when we're deliberately dragging people out of position, opening up some spaces, that should have been even easier to play because they're a man down. And when you try and do the build-out play from the back, you're just looking to kind of entice them up the pitch. And again, I don't think we maybe kind of, I don't know, it does rile a lot of fans when there's just a lot of nonsense sideward passing or whatever. But, you do want them to come out. You do want them to offer you space to then play, like the diagonal that we hit for Daizen. I don't know, this is maybe a bit contradictory to maybe the last 10 minutes of the game. I'm saying we had space to run into because we drop deeper and because they have the urgency of the game. As the game goes on, they do need the result. They're always going to press and go forward as well. So I think splitting the team in two in terms of the attack and defence, like we've seen happen here. Again, very good game management from the backroom team. But it just feels like the whole second half and the whole 11v10 part just doesn't sit right with me, because it does feel like it was quite tame. It was quite neutered. And we've won by one goal. We've got the 3 points. The points are on the board. But really, a lot of these derbies this season, we've won 3 of them, we've drawn 1. But we've just been missing that air of a totally convincing result for me. Now, if we have a look at the player ratings in this game out of 100, Callum McGregor is actually the top performing player in this match here, getting his assist and catching 35 points of all-around performance. The wee man was fouled 6 times, committing 3 fouls himself. There was a lot of turnover, shirt pulling between him and whoever his opposite number was in the game. He's got a few effective clearances in there, a few blocks, but where the big points come is in possession for McGregor. He's only missed 5 passes in the whole game, bagged himself 2 interceptions, and he won 7 duels, lost 3, so +4, won 7 out of 10. Really good success rate there. But 67 passes, 27 of them into the final third. He's got himself a shot on target, and he's made 3 attempted assists, so he's played 3 balls in there that have resulted in, a chance or a shot on target, that kind of thing. And we don't really see that much of an actual all-around performance from McGregor. And I do feel that a lot of these actions, especially the ones like in the final third and stuff, were really captured in the first half. And, great result, 95 out of 100, almost perfect. But, I'd love to see more of that from McGregor. He's clearly got it, I can't see it enough, and against 10 men, you just expect a little bit more. Matt O'Reilly only collecting an 84.4 out of 100. Now, he has lost 10 points for the penalty missed, 5 for the actual penalty missing, and the BCM that comes along with that. So, kind of on par with McGregor in terms of actual output. He's played 11 balls into the box, 3 of them became attempted assists. He got himself 2 shots on target. Basically, half of his passes are in the final third as well. A real chance creation monster in this one. 7 duels won, 3 lost. Again, very similar to McGregor. He's got his goal on the day, of course, as well. 2 tackles for us, as well as that effective clearance. Made no fouls, but was fouled twice. Another great performance from Big Matt O'Reilly. But Alistair Johnston was probably the low-key top performer on the day. Now, we were mentioning his kind of battle with Fabio Silva and how Fabio Silva, when he was holding the line up when it was 11v11, we didn't really see too much of Johnston in the final third. But over the game, Johnston won 7 duels, only lost 1, 33 accurate passes. Again, almost half of them, 16 of them into the final third, 3 long balls into the opposition as well, like line-breaking passes for, Forrest or, whoever it might have been, maybe Kyogo. He's won 2 tackles, 4 effective clearances, but in attack, he's managed to get 5 balls into the box for our shots. I think a lot of these shots were edge of the box stuff because we were taking lots of shots from the edge of the box. One of them became a big chance created. And of his 5 attempted assists, only 2 balls were into the box. So again, these are chances that are created from the outside of the box here. So some good statistics that paint a picture, but they don't paint the whole picture. But AJ, absolutely fantastic. Definitely one of the standout performers of the day. Big Carter Vickers takes a lot of plaudits again for being fridge at the back. Again, huge passing statistics, great duel success rate. Tackles, interceptions are all 1. No attacking output from him. That's fine. And Liam Scales, who I see a lot of people actually giving some credit in this match for. He got 1 attempted assist in this match. He didn't actually win more duels than he lost, sadly. But he did get himself 2 interceptions, a lot of passing in this game, 6 effective clearances, which I think is one of the main memories people have in this game of just everything that went near him, he was dealing with. But he does that every week, so that's not really something new for me to see from Liam Scales. But I think this was the worst in the team, to be honest with you. A lot of people were talking about Hatate being wasteful, but Scales has missed 13 passes in the game, and Rio Hatate missed 7. Now, areas of the pitch, and maybe some of the Scales missed passes are kind of clearances, but it's maybe a pass and it goes out for a throw-in, that kind of thing. So sometimes with data and stats, you just need to think about where does that stat came from, especially if you watch the game. Like we always say on the channel, stats should just help you understand what you've seen there already. They shouldn't really be forming your opinion for you, if that makes sense. And the last one I'll probably make a mention of, Jimmy Forrest, another great game for him, playing a solid 70 minutes. He pulled in a really good score here. If he got an assist or a goal, it would have definitely been one of the standout performers of the day. He's got a shot on target. He's won a contest, taking a guy for a run and doing them. 2 attempted assists, 5 balls into the box. Good passing stats for a winger here. Missed passes for him, only 5. He's won a tackle and been fouled a little bit. So a great kind of throwback performance here for Forrest. And again, if you have a quick glance over the Rangers scores, none of these guys were a threat. None of these guys were overly troubling. The goal was really against the run of play. And even when they did have periods of possession, like you can see here from the statistics, without me going into it too much, like look at this. Yilmaz, off the bench, played 30 minutes, scored 37. He has outperformed Tavernier, Suter, almost Davies, Barrett. He's outperformed so many of the actual players in the team from the short time he was on the pitch. He got 4 balls into the box. He won 2 contests, like running and dribbling by people. And it just really shows you how kind of blunt this Rangers team is. And it just kind of highlights how I feel that we really should have got a slightly better result on this one. Buckland obviously saves a penalty, what makes his score look respectable, as well as Dessers and Sterling with goals and assists to their name. Now, I think against Kilmarnock, it's going to be a copy and paste effort in terms of the starting 11. I cannot really see there being much change from the last 2 games, certainly coming into this one. But like we know with Kilmarnock away, Derek McInnes and his teams are always up for giving us a tough game, no matter what's going on. Now that he's not got that personal, agent mission from Rangers to go and get a result in this one to maybe help their efforts, it is just a bit of a Hail Mary that maybe all those guys have, but we know it's not going to come in, is it? Now, McGregor is currently on 5 yellows, so if he gets booked in this game, he'll miss the last game of the season, which I don't think would stop him from starting this game. But I think if we get the result ahead of time, you might see McGregor not collect 90 minutes in this match. And I think really otherwise, the only other question mark I would have in this is the right back and Carter Vickers. So Carter Vickers, we know, you don't need me to tell you, right? We know. Maybe he gets rested for this game. Maybe in the Rocky gets the minutes. And with Alistair Johnston coming off with that kind of bad injury, with this game being such a quick turnaround, maybe Ralston could come in. So I think this is maybe the only zone of the pitch, these 3 guys here, where maybe Iwata starts, McGregor comes on later, maybe they just rest McGregor. You don't want to not have the captain there for trophy day, come on. We don't want him doing the John Terry and having to go put the kit on after sitting in the stands for the match. So I think these are the only areas that are up for question, and it is just down to, we don't want McGregor suspended for the last game, Is Johnston still kind of banged and bruised from the weekend? And Carter Vickers, do we maybe not want him to play down on that pitch? But otherwise, like I think it was Sutton that said it in the post-match, and I really can't echo this enough for any of the, I don't want to say criticisms, but feedback I've had in this video or this season for the team is very, very true, that if we had O'Reilly and Hatate and Daizen and this squad here play 30 matches this season, we would be about 3 levels of quality ahead of where we're at the moment, and we would have probably absolutely ran away with the league, and we would have probably, I know we're probably on for a double, but would have probably been, a little bit more OG Brendan-esque. It may have been a little bit closer to how we remember Brendan Rodgers Celtic in terms of the goals, the results, and, trebles and, all that kind of stuff. So I do feel that, we're getting into a good stride at the moment. It's great that this team is there and available, and I don't think the manager's going to waste it too much. I think he's going to want these guys to play every opportunity, every minute they can in the remaining 2 matches to the league's won, basically. At this point, we all know that, but it's really time to put frosting and cherries on top of the cake and get the party started, because, we're here to have fun, aren't we? Ahead of the last game of the season at home to St Mirren. I'll remind you again, on Thursday night, we'll be doing a live stream to preview the match, and we'll be giving away match tickets to Celts Are Here subscribers on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the video today, guys. On screen now is a link to the stream on Thursday, so you can click on that and set a little reminder, a little alarm bell so you don't miss it, as well as something else that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Hail, hail.